Hey everyone, it's Helen from SMB Deal Hunter. Today we have Sam Mahmood with us, an entrepreneur who's now buying paving companies. Very excited to hear Sam's story. Sam, it's great to have you on today.
Helen, thanks for having me on. Appreciate you posting this and inspiring a lot of search funders and business buyers around the community.
Thank you, thank you. Let's start with your background, Sam. How did you get into the space, or what were you doing before?
My background has always been in entrepreneurship. So at a young age at 24, started a medical device company. I was selling medical devices as a W-2, realized I was unemployable, and then I started my own distributorship where I was brokering myself to multiple different medical device companies. These are lower middle market companies that basically give me the line in a geographic area, and I go sell around Southern California. From there, I kind of peeled the onion back and say, how can I go a little bit bigger? And then I said, let's go make this stuff. And I actually took a flight to Germany, was calling all these manufacturers a week before, had no idea how to go do this. And then, a few months later, I learned how to go FDA medical devices, brought it here. Now we have national distribution across the US. So I scaled my company, Surgical Republic, to, a well-sized company today where we have distribution across 50 states. And then from that, I realized, how do we continue to grow? I did a bolt-on acquisition through my medical device company, and that was my first acquisition at the age of 27. And I realized that you can go SBA something at 90% loan to value on a business that can scale you a lot faster than doing a lot more cold calling or paid media, right? From there, I just got more curiosity in the whole acquisition space. I started a holding company where we acquired a few more businesses therefore after. And then now I'm the CEO of my fund called the Pave. Currently, it's a $15 million fund where we're buying paving companies in the Southwest. We closed our platform company in Arizona, and we'll be buying about 5 or 6 more companies here in the near future. That's a little rundown on me.
Wow, love that. Very, very exciting. Was the first bolt-on through SBA, by the way?
It was, yeah. It was about 1.2 million in revenue. Bought it for like 2.6 multiple of EBITDA. I knew the space really well, knew the seller, structured a unique seller carrier in the deal as well, and it just amplified my business. And I started to understand how to create velocity a lot faster, and that's where the acquisition growth was the new oil for me.
That's exciting. What were some of the other businesses you acquired, prior to paving?
Yeah, so I bought a podcast agency. That was a unique one, and then I'm starting a podcast here in the next few weeks. I saw a young founder who was growing rapidly. Her podcast agency was actually something unique in the sense that she was doing podcasts for enterprise companies and VC firms. So she did podcasts for Indeed, Alibaba, Shopify, large enterprise companies. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then she brought it here to the US and started scaling rapidly. And I bought a large piece into that. I also bought an M&A law firm as well. As I was spending a ton on legal, growing the holdco in my business, I said, let me go look at my P&L today. What am I spending the most money on? I'm spending a shit ton on law and legal firms. So I ended up buying a firm and we added that to the holdco and we turned that into a profitable business because now all my friends need fund docs, SPV documents, and so forth. And now we turned that into from an expense into a revenue generating machine for us. Now a CPA firm as well. So acquired a CPA firm, an accounting firm, I should say. The unique aspect of that was another thing. I looked at my P&L statement, spending a lot on bookkeeping, a lot on the quality of earnings reports to go buy these companies. So we acquired one of those and acquiring a second one here actually the next 2 weeks. I like those because the roll up in that sector actually creates a large arbitrage for PE today. They're quite interested in that space. So those are the few companies we bought thus far. And then, a paving company we recently just closed a few weeks ago as well.
Wow, a lot to discuss today. Very, very exciting. I love just taking sort of the biggest line items from your P&L and just going and acquiring those companies. That's very smart.
Yeah, I also look at this from a perspective that many people should do this, Helen, right? Is like, what are you spending the most on today? And how can you offset that and change that? I have this thesis too, is like a lot of people come to me just like they come to you. It's like, hey, they want to go buy their first business. And I didn't pay attention too much in high school and middle school, but there's one thing I did pay attention to. It was the law of the standard deviation. So what is that? It's the distance between the core and you, right? So if your skill set today is selling, marketing, copywriting, go buy something within that space where you can go drive organic growth. And that's usually the best advice I give to people. And like that's what I was doing too, where where can I go entice myself into businesses where I can go amplify growth? Another business I actually just bought into was a chief of staff remote business, right? What is that? So, oh, you've seen other companies like Somewhere that Nick Huber owns and so forth, and other offshore agencies. But a chief of staff is something that basically becomes your right hand man to your small business. I get to vomit all my problems on this individual at a fraction of the cost, and he gets to implement a level of technology and CRM systems that I am unbeknownst to and can go solve all those problems. To me, it's a gold mine, right? From that, I said I started using the services. And I said I'm going to go buy this company, and I bought a large stake of the company, and now all my friends want to use it, all my communities want to use it as well, and that's turned into a revenue generating machine for us as well. So I think it just becomes a flywheel effect of like, what are you using? Can you go buy the business and help other people use it as well?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Send me the name of that too. I need a remote chief of staff. That's
Definitely.
awesome. Curious on the CPA firm side, a lot of people are interested in acquiring CPA firms. What have you been looking for there? I think one of the biggest challenges people face is, if it's a retiring owner, there's a lot of key man risk. Maybe they lose the clients. How are you guys approaching these CPA acquisitions?
So a lot of search funders reach out to me specifically. 98% of them I deviate against. 2% I say, oh, let's have a conversation. I had a guy who cold outreached me, got my number somehow, sent me a text, and was straight directly to the point of how he could add value to me where I can add value in that given sector. I'm always looking for like, where's the asymmetric upside, right? And he had an M&A background and was a CPA accountant for 10 years and wanted to go do his second acquisition and didn't have the capital to go do so at the time based off, previous issues, right? I vetted out his resources and so forth. He checked all the boxes and we partnered up with him. Now we're going to go buy a CPA firm that's 5 minutes away from his house. Basically, the deal is about 950K in revenue, 365K of EBITDA, and we're buying it for about $800,000, right? So a little under like 3x EBITDA. The beauty about this too is we're doing an SBA loan on this. So I'm only bringing $28,000 to the deal to close this. And this is the second deal we're closing in 2 weeks. So how this happened, the whole SBA beautiful thing about this is if you defer the seller carry for 2 years, you only have to bring 2.5% to 2.5 to 5% to the deal. And that's like the whole unlock. You can lever up basically 97.5% on these deals. And if you think about the arbitrage on that and the equity multiple you're getting, basically you're getting an MOIC about 17 times on your cash on year one if you've done it correctly. So he lives 5 minutes away from this business. She's doing zero bookkeeping. Everyone's onshore. He owns everything offshore. He has an established team of doing fractional CFO work, QOV work, and we're now going to implement that into this brick and mortar office, but then eventually take the brick and mortar office away once we've established that rapport with the customer base and turn this entirely to a cloud-based system. So our unique proposition here from a CPA roll-up is I have a CPA operator who's licensed, who can do all the operations. I'm the equity backer to go do this. And now we can go acquire more of these brick and mortar firms and wrap this under a holdco that is cloud-based that can go serve potentially the entire nation. And I'm seeing a lot more of these. We're both in the Hampton community. I've used a couple of these guys who have these CPA, these accounting services who do quality of earnings report to people all over the country. And to me, again, it goes back to what's the things that I'm touching the most. We're both acquiring a lot of businesses. I do a Q of E report on every business I do. I have investors. I want to make sure that they are abided by knowing that we are doing this effectively and correctly. And those Q of E reports are what, 12 grand, 13 grand per every business that we buy. So we want to make sure that we can probably bring that in-house as well and have my team to go do that and companies that we own go do that as well. So it just made a lot of sense for us to continue acquiring these businesses, and you're buying them for 1x of revenue or maybe 2.5 to 3 times of EBITDA. In a market today where you can go capitalize on that, the cash multiple makes a ton of sense.
No, that 100% agreed. I guess from your perspective, are you finding folks are willing to basically take out the SBA loan and PG and you're putting in the down payment effectively?
Yeah, I'm doing that. And I do a limited PG with my operating partner too. So that's one thing you can calculate towards. Basically, they're responsible for 20% of the allocation of the entire loan amount. And then I'm responsible for the other amount. I try to not SBA as much anymore. Currently, I have like 3 SBA deals out, but now I'm doing a lot more non-recourse debt for bigger deals that we're buying, and we've structured that in a way where they're based off turns of EBITDA, and then if it drops below a certain EBITDA threshold, the PG kicker kicks in. But we try to prevent that moving forward.
Got it. That makes sense. And all these various businesses, I guess, especially the podcast agency, the M&A law firm, CPA firms. What's your role in those deals?
So I'm the CEO of just one business today. And I always like to make that very clear when I'm going into this. I like to find I call myself like an emerging manager. How can I find an emerging operating manager who I see a true vision in them that I can go invest in them and help them grow and propel their business. So I love finding good operators in spaces that I think have a cool asymmetric upside. But my role today is just in some of these other businesses is to hire the best talent and fuel them with the best resources to grow the business. But there's already CEOs in place. Today, my sole focus is being the CEO of my fund, the Pave, and my sole fiduciary obligation is hiring better CEOs who are smarter than me of those companies as well. So it just becomes a domino effect, Helen, of like, can I hire the best talent around me? Can I get the best resources for all these people? And I serve as a coach. Like that's all I really am. Today, if you put me in a paving company to go operate that, I'm probably a liability, to be honest. And my investors know that, the companies know that as well. Like my $1,000 an hour task is not to go operate a paving company or a podcast agency or a CPA firm at all. It's really to go find the best people who are 10 times better than you and I in that given sector to go operate that and give them all the resources possible. And that is the unlock. And I've learned that just from the communities that we're part of, and that's how it becomes scalable. I was a CEO, a solo founder of my business for 7 years. I walked up the hill, climbed it solo, and then realized I was pretty lonely up there. And finally, year 8, I was like, let's go have a partner. Let's go build something with other people, give a little bit of piece of pie to some investors and partner, and grow something a lot more scalable. And I think finally I've realized that that is the recipe of success. There's very few billion-dollar companies that are built by themselves. I'm not saying I'm building a billion-dollar company today, but the pursuit is always there to go build a big thing. And you need great people around you. And I was probably pretty ignorant from the time I was 24 to 31, not to really know that. And now I'm 32 today, and I'm all for it. I would say that.
It's I feel exactly the same way. Hiring is truly the biggest unlock, and people are always like, how can you run a business if you're not the CEO? And honestly, the biggest unlock for us was just hiring great talent. And the first time we hired someone great, I was like, wow, I'm not the only one that can do this. Why did I even think I was the only one that can do this, right?
Yeah, it's a crazy feeling. It really
Yeah.
is. When like someone is making a sale outside of you, like that first time this ever happened, I'm like, holy shit, like it's gonna work maybe, right?
Yeah. It's like the best feeling to feel like, wow, I can actually step out of this. That's awesome. I guess let's talk about the Pave. Why did you, after all these experiences, decide to launch a fund buying paving companies out of, everything that you could be doing?
It's a great question. I built the criteria, right? So like as we built the holdco, my holdco is S&P Ventures where we bought some of these businesses. My partner Chris and I were like, hey, this is fun, this is cool. We can buy some agnostic businesses, but let's go 2 inches wide and 10 feet deep in a sector that I think is beyond overlooked. You're seeing HVAC, you're seeing plumbing companies. Those roll-ups are, I think, overdone and overinflated. No offense, but Grant Cardone is promoting HVAC roll-ups. I'm okay with.
I've been getting those ads too.
Yeah, right. I was like, oh shit, I lucked out of that one. But then the pave, right? So why paving? There was 5 things I was looking for. I built this thesis prior to picking paving. So I said, is it essential, right? Paving is essential to America's infrastructure. Without it, it would collapse, right? Roads are very important. Is it a sector of retiring baby boomers? Obviously, a lot of these baby boomers are retiring in multiple sectors. But Helen, who do you know is going into paving today at the age of 30? Not many, right? Is it in high demand, right? So in paving today, I saw something where there's a large backlog of work based off the bipartisan act that Joe Biden passed. It's a $2 trillion act that passed not long ago, back in 2022. Till 2030, they're putting $350 billion to fix roads and bridges out of that $2 trillion. To me, that signals something very important. That roads are going to be exponentially more valuable for another reason too. All the self-driving vehicles that are happening today, the Teslas, the robo taxis, they're making these roads and infrastructure inevitably become the most important thing to make sure human capital is removed from Ubers and so forth to drive these cars without us. So I said, these roads are going to be so important to us, especially the line stripping on the roads today. All of them are going from 4 inches to 6. Think about how much work that needs to be done across the country. And the last two were, is there barriers to entry? Helen, I think you and I can go start an HVAC company tomorrow, but we probably could not start a paving company tomorrow. These paving companies require like about $1 million of capital to start with the equipment and so forth. So there's high dollars to barriers to entry, which I actually liked. It resonates a lot with my medical device company. There's red tape there that requires a sense of knowledge to go do this type of work. And then obviously is it AI resistant? AI is a hot thing. I'm not that well versed in AI today, but I know how to go buy boring businesses. And I just want to make sure that we're focusing on a line of work that can outlast us, and AI won't replace that. Those are the 5 things I thought of, right? And I started combining, the whole new technology of self-driving vehicles to something antiquated like roads, and making a creative thesis around that. And it's drawn a ton of interest, right? We raised a fair amount of capital thus far, a few million dollars of our total allocation, and we raise per deal right now. We've actually, a very cool thing for your audience to understand is how to raise capital for these deals. There's multiple platitudes, and I think we've done quite well and mastered this process. So we've raised from retail investors. We're a 506c accredited fund, so you have to be an accredited investor to invest. So we got some high net worth individuals who wrote some $50,000 to $150,000 checks. Then we also use fund managers. Not many people know this model. Basically, a fund manager almost serves as like a sales rep who goes out there and syndicates this with their investors via an SPV, which is a special purpose vehicle. So then that one check would come into our fund, and we basically have a group of people going out there and raising on our behalf. And then now as well, we're raising from family office for larger rounds. If you want to increase the valuation of our fund, and we're doing about a $30 to $40 million raise right now on that.
Exciting. And you mentioned, now you're looking at more non-recourse debt. Tell us about that a little bit. And, I think a lot of people know about SBA, but don't know
Yeah.
about these other options.
Yeah. So as a fund, we can't use SBA. So SBA is for a sponsor who's going to go operate the business. We have to claim that we're a fund, Israel. So we have to go use something called private credit debt. So the rates are a little bit more expensive. We're taking senior debt out between like 14 and 15%. And then they basically marginalize that based off the turns of EBITDA on the business. So if the business today is, $1 million of EBITDA, and they'll lend 3 or 3.5 times. So they'll give you $3.5 million, three to $3.5 million of debt on that. And if the business is, $6 million or $5 million, you have to bridge the rest with equity or a layer of mezzanine debt, which then lies, after the senior debt, right? So that's how we structure our deals today. We use senior debt from private credit funds, and it becomes non-recourse. The way it becomes non-recourse is you have a track record and they trust you, and the business had good collateral. The thing I like about paving as well is there is good asset values in all these businesses. For example, the last business we acquired has $2.5 million of equipment value. We're only going to take on about $2.5 million of actual debt, maybe total about $3 million of debt if need be. So if you look at the liquidation value of the equipment towards the total allocation of debt that we're taking on, they're very similar to one another. So I always think about worst case scenario. Sam fucks everything up. I ruin the entire deal. What's the worst case scenario? We always have to think about that as a fund operator or a business operator. You sell the entire equipment off, and you have a small delta to go and marry that to your investors. And the banks like that. And some of these service business and agency business that you see today, you're baking all that based off of customers and receivables and so forth, but there's no hard collateral. So there's a level of risk there to know, are those customers reliable enough once you leave the business, right? So for us, we do something very creative for all of our deals. And this is kind of my strategy of how I structure everything. How do you make sure everyone's biggest fear of, I want to buy a business to buying a business? And it's about the seller carry and the terms. Every deal I seller carry. There's no negotiation. There's no like ifs, ands, or buts. And the seller carry goes between 10 and 30% of the deal. I try to get it up to 30 just because it gives good skin in the game. And the 30% is tied to the next year's performance. So all the CEOs and founders of the company stay on for at least a year. And it's our obligation to see if we want to go bring in our own new CEO or someone else. But we tie that seller carry to a performance for the next 12 months. And if they perform, they get the rest of the seller carry. If they don't, we take the delta of what the last year's EBITDA was to this year's EBITDA and negate that and take the difference from that against the seller carry. So they have skin in the game. And that's a totally fair deal. So if you're buying a business today for $5 million and you sell their carry $1.5 million at 5% IO for 7 years, a third of what the senior debt is, you then say, okay, well, you have $1 million of EBITDA. You got to hit that again next year. If you only hit 500K of EBITDA, I'm going to take 500K off your seller carry, and that's a fair deal. Then you end up buying the business for maybe a 3x multiple instead of 3.5x multiple, right? And that's how you want to structure deals today. And I think we've done quite successful in doing so. I got to give a lot of credit to my partner Chris. He's a spreadsheet junkie as well, and he's like the best yin to the yang partnership that we have. Another thing too that people should understand is it's a lonely journey trying to go buy this business by yourself. And we always want to know, like, who can you go partner up with to go buy these businesses. So again, understand your skill set of what you're good at. To me, I can go raise capital. I can go talk to founders. I can go hire CEOs. I can go structure deals with businesses. Chris, my partner, is a savant saying, this is the most we can go pay for the business, and this is the least we can go pay for the business, right? And this is what we need to go give the pref returns back to our investors to assure that this makes sense. And we're the yin to the yang. I play offense, he plays defense. And that's what we want to go find when you go pick a partner as well. So I just unpacked a shit ton there, so I'll let you kind of speak.
No, no. So many questions. I guess the first deal you guys just closed on, where'd you find it? How have you guys been sourcing? How long did it take? Did you partner up with someone on that one who is now the CEO? Tell us more about that.
So this one we actually found through a broker. And how we find deals today is two models. We work with a lot of brokers as well. Right now we have a focus in the Southwest with a heavy focus in Arizona. And a lot of the brokers know that we're called the Pave. We buy paving companies between $1 and $10 million of EBITDA. We have a good brand based off that, right? And I think that helps us a lot when buying companies because we're very focused. And we have an off-market approach too. I mentioned I own a chief of staff business. Basically, they go in and create some secret sauce to go do a cold email campaign and a cold outreach campaign via phone calls and call a bunch of these owners to get them on calls with myself and my partner. And that has worked as well. So we've gotten a couple leads through that. And then this company, how we closed it, what are we doing with the current existing founder? So he's staying on for 12 months, and I already hired a CEO from day one. The CEO and him are going to work right away. I found the CEO through a specific construction and paving recruiting. I paid a lot of money for this because I know A+ talent costs twice as much and it's worth it. And he's a guy that I think is a perfect fit. And I get asked a lot is, how do you hire a CEO? How do you hire a new founder? And I have a few rules for this, right? But the first rule outside of culture and are they going to fit with the company is the 2X rule. So have they built a company or operated a company that if the company today is $10 million, they've taken it at 20? And have they done it in this sector in that given geographic area? 45 interviews later, number 46 was that guy. And I flew him out from Oklahoma to come to Arizona to go operate this company. And we're very strong. We're very strong and supportive of his efforts, and we think he's the right fit. Another thing to mention too, which I always highly recommend for people, is that you have today if you want to go buy a business, you own 100% of the business today for the most part. Well, there's of the pie, you should go allocate a little bit to a couple other people. So I went and recruited the paving goddess, right? I'm not a paving goddess. Chris, my partner's not the paving goddess. So when we're talking to investors, like, you guys are two young guys in their 30s, you guys look cute on camera, but who's the actual paving expert here? Well, I bought Sean Godwin. The guy runs, a paving mecca in South Carolina, which is non-competitional to us. And he runs a $500 million operation, $50 million of EBITDA, and he's probably the largest privately held paving organization in the country. I somehow convinced this guy to come partner up with two young guys in their early 30s and go buy paving companies. And that brings a ton of credibility. When we talk to business we want to go buy, when we talk to private equity groups, family offices, it shows the team is well established. And you want to give a little of the piece of the pie to pay down any ignorance you don't know. And he's able to go do that. From a glance right away, he can see the equipment values, the P&Ls, the balance sheets from like 10 seconds, we'll know whether it's a good company or bad company. Well, it might take us like 30 minutes to run through everything, right? And to me, that's worth its weight in gold. And I think highly, if you're going to go pursue a sector, whether it's accounting or whatever niche code you want to go do, go find the best person in that space and say, hey, do you want to come on the journey with me and do this? And there's people who are in their 50s and 60s who want to go help a young searcher to go do this. And I think that's people's biggest mistake of actually pursuing buying a business today is not forming the right people around them. And I think we've done that thus far. And that's what's made this whole process comfortable because people are like, Sam, you're a medical advice guy. You're a healthcare dude. Like, what the fuck do you know about paving companies? And I'm like, I realize now, Helen, we can go buy whatever the fuck we want. We can go buy technology companies. We can go buy accounting firms. I don't care. If you just go find the best people to come along the journey with you and help you with whatever business you want to go acquire, you can be agnostic. And I want people to understand that because it's very important that this opened up my eyes completely, that this is the new way of acquisition for us.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And in this case, with your paving CEO, did you find him? Did you poach him before you closed the deal? He was obviously on this journey through sourcing and diligence and all of those things, but was he still
Yeah.
working at his role? Did you kind of poach him beforehand and have him commit to the bigger vision? But how did that work?
So he was working as a CEO of another paving company. The recruiter does a good job to do a lot of outreach of even, CEOs who are working for different companies. And I have to then go pitch the vision, right? The unique thing about us is, you were to go buy several paving companies in a given market. He can capture some upside of the entire portfolio of companies if he wants to help merge companies together. And to him, that sounded enticing. He's sitting in Oklahoma at a farm working at one paving company, but the guy had the grind. He's in his 40s still. He's not in his late 60s. And he said, this sounds appealing. And he's already worked in Arizona for, 15 years for Sunland, one of the largest paving companies in the country. So going back to a sunny state and jumping on a journey where he can have huge upside in the future if done correctly, well, we just sold the vision to him. So you have to have a good product to go find great talent. And that's one thing that I've realized if you're going to go build something today, what does your offer really look like, right? The Hermosi thing, like, do you have an offer that it's hard for people to say no to? And I think we finally put something together where, from an investor standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. For a recruitment standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. For the advisors to come in, it makes a lot of sense. And that was like the true end all be all of what I wanted to build as a visionary here. And I recruited my entire team around us to go do. And I want to make sure that they truly believe in what we want to go pursue for the next 5 years because I'm so bullish on this at this point now, based off of the people I've recruited around me to go build what I'm building today.
No, that's fantastic. And I guess was step one the recruiting, or was step one, um, going out and sourcing deals? Was it raising the fund? Like, what was sort of
Yeah,
the chronology of everything?
it's a great question. So you take steps based off feedback too, right? So initially you're like, okay, hey guys, I'm Sam and Chris. We're gonna go start the Pave. We're gonna buy some paving companies. Let's try and go raise some money. Try to raise some money from some retail guys. They're like, well, where's the paving expert? Hold on, let me go find that guy. Find the paving expert. Come back to the guys, got the paving expert. Let's go raise some money. Okay, that makes sense. Who's going to operate the business? All right, hold on. Let me go find the recruiter and go hire the CEO and then go find the company. Okay, I found the company. I found the CEO. Can we get some money now? Okay, that makes sense. You did the chronological orders based off of feedback, right? So sometimes you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to go get good feedback from people that you trust who want to believe in you, but want to make sure it's a safer investment because you shorten the gap of the knowledge that you don't know. And once you do that, then you build trust with your investors that you've done the due diligence. The key thing with running a fund is documentation and making sure that you've done all the homework possible to assure that you are mitigating as much risk. So for us, the key critical thing that we always try to focus on is, we have the persona in place in every aspect to assure that we've bridged anything that we don't know. We've bridged it with something we can document with personnel, with fund level documents, whatever it may be, to assure that we're doing this correctly, right? My partners have all run funds. This is my first fund. We brought even a capital markets guy to go manage the fund managers. So we put really good people in place for that reason. And, the chronological order just comes from feedback, I would say.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And with the fund, you mentioned it's a $15 million fund. Did you raise all of that? Like how does that work in terms of timing? You mentioned also, I think, raising deal by deal. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about that.
So how a fund is formed today is in the private equity side is we pay a pref and then there's a split therefore after. So it's called a hurdle, right? And you can have one or two hurdles. So we don't raise an entire fund from the get-go because the hurdle will start to, sorry, the money will start to accrue on the pref. So we basically have almost like a revolving ready to go capital from different capital allocators and retail investors today that we said, hey, by this date on October 31st, we're going to do another $5 million raise. And they get ready to make sure they have the money to allocate towards our next deal. And that's how we're doing it today. That to me is like, it's an okay model, but a better model is having a large amount of capital sitting there that is patient capital, which is what we're also pursuing from more family office and private equity groups who believe in the long-term vision. So a lot of people who've helped us raise as well have raised in real estate and they've deployed money in like multifamily and mobile home parks and so forth. And that's usually based off of a cash on cash return, where in private equity, what we do, Helen, not really based off that. It's based off of more of a multiple on invested capital, and they want to see something more on an IRR base, right? So we had to kind of train our investors, the early investors, that this is more about retained earnings and assuring that they're in it for the long haul with us. We want to go redeploy capital into the operation of the business to juice and beef that up. So when it's year 4 or year 3, whatever it is, and we have $10 million of EBITDA, yes, we want to distribute cash throughout the year, absolutely. But the upside of getting 8, 9, 10x on $10 million is much better than just distributing their 12 pref, right? Or their 15 pref, whatever it is. And educating our investors on that, they have to believe in us as operators to go do that. And we finally feel that we've done that thus far. And I think it's all about the personnel of who you go raise from if you're going to go do this, of letting them know that this is about making sure that you are optimizing the business for an exit. And that's what we do, right? We're not like Sieva and Xavier. We're a long-term holding company. I build and buy to go sell again. And I want my investors to go have a promising exit of, 5, 8, 9 times by doing so.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And for people who, haven't done this, where do you suggest finding these fund managers to help raise money for you? Some of the non-recourse, some of the, I
Yeah.
guess, private credit funds. How do you recommend even reaching out or finding these folks?
Well, I'll be generous enough because I like you, Helen. You can just reach out to me first, and then I have some access to people I can refer you guys to. Um, it's a hard place to navigate. Where we play is like a place in the gray zone in the sense that not many people know about this. Like private credit debt and knowing brokers, they won't respond back to you if you just do a cold outreach. It's a lot of it is through a warm intro because they have to trust the operator. So we use a broker. Teresa is awesome from Act Capital. I use her. I'll drop a link with her after. And she helped us basically do a roadshow finding the best private credit fund um, debt brokers out there that can do some equity and some debt if need be. And we met with about 30 of them, right? And then we had our pickings based off of who we thought was best. We ended up going with Quick Capital for our last deal. We liked them because they were quick. We were the fastest company to close with them. We closed a deal in 13 days. So it's a lot faster than the SBA process.
Wow.
And but the one thing people have to understand, maybe based off your community and the deals that we're buying, is the financial modeling underwriting process is an absolute fucking beast. And that is the part where I really want people to understand. If you want to go buy bigger deals, you have to have a level of financial literacy that you understand. Understanding LBOs and discounted cash flow models and being able to go present that to the private credit funds and your investors to assure that this is a much bigger deal, right? Like we're buying companies that have 12, 15, $18 million in revenue now, and they're much different than an SBA deal that maybe has $1 million of revenue, $300,000 of EBITDA. We all start there, but if you want to graduate and buy these bigger companies, the best thing I would try to go do is partner with someone who has a strong financial underwriting skill and learn that process over time as well.
No, that's great advice. Um, no, that's super interesting. And for I guess where you're at now, what are the biggest challenges? Is it deal flow? Is it raising the capital? Is it finding the right folks to help run these companies? Is it all of the above?
So initially it was like, how's the capital going to look like, right? When we first got started, I was unsure. And then I brought a good capital markets guy on and we were able to raise some capital. And then I kind of started focusing on talking to the guys who have, billion dollar funds, $800 million funds. And what I realized, Helen, is if you have a good product out there, there's money out there for you. And the bigger you go, the easier it gets. As crazy as it sounds, the bigger the deals you go, it's less as there's no recourse on debt. The bigger the deals you go, you got to go access large private equity groups, large family office where their minimum check size is 5 million bucks. So you just have to change your mindset a little bit, saying go bigger, put a great team around you. Let's go buy a $15 million business, and if you need to go get 5 million bucks, go find the person who has to go write a $5 million check. We don't think about that when we first get started because we're like, I don't have 5 million bucks. I don't know people with 5 million bucks. But I promise you, there are people out there today who are looking for people like who are in your community who are badasses and go buy and operate a business. And if you know how to go find the right capital and the right business and marry those two things together, it'll be quite promising. And I think that's what we're focusing on today. The challenge I would say today is our niche is so specific. And I like that, but there's a downside to that too. The downside is we buy paving and line striping companies today in the Southwest, doing $1 in $10 million of EBITDA that have been around for at least 15 years. So I know exactly what I'm buying, but they're not like HVAC where there's 100 of them in San Diego for sale. So it's a slim picking market, but I also enjoy that we focus our efforts because the second anyone sees a paving company today, they think of Sam and they know like Sam's the guy for that. And that is the identity I want to go put out there because when you have a purpose, people will remember you. First, like if my company was just called like LP Capital, right? For example, and I buy construction companies, e-commerce, accounting, I'm a little bit more vague. And if you want a level of success today when getting started, you want to have tunnel vision focus. And the tunnel vision focus will get you from A to B a lot faster. So there's always problems, there's always challenges, but I think we just navigate through them from, having great people around us.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And what's your day-to-day like now? Actually, before even talking about that, how did the first deal go? You guys just closed.
Yeah.
How have the first couple of weeks been?
It's been awesome. The best thing you should do, by the way, for everyone to know this as well, when you close a business, and especially this company has 42 employees, so it's not a small company, right? You have to go and give the biggest hug to everyone else. So that's priority number one. Whether it's a Zoom call, you fly out there, give the biggest hug you ever done in your entire life, because change is scary. So the first thing I did once when we closed the company, is I got on Zoom, got with the key employees and then all the other employees as well, and let them know like, hey, I'm Sam. I just bought the company, but nothing's going to change. It's only going to get better. And I want you to know that I am so happy to have all you guys on this team because all that's going to happen is the best people in this company are going to continue to thrive and just be motivated that we took the company over because, Dan, the CEO, he's 68, he's ready to retire a little bit and he's going to stick around. But we want you guys to know that you guys are in good hands with us and they need to hear that. And by doing so, it's really like calmed a lot of the nerves. And a lot of them were at unease at first. When you hear that, I would too, right?
Yeah.
I've been at work at companies when I first got going and they got acquired and kind of some douchebags came in and didn't like them. And I realized that, you want to have a good line of communication. And that is the most important thing. And the fact that we've done that now, and then we're introducing very clear visibility of what we want to go do for the next 69 days, next 12 months with the company, the best people who want to be on this journey will stay around. The people who don't, fuck them in the end, right? Like they can leave because ultimately you have to put a vision for people knowing that there will be some change, but the change will be good and the good guys will stay with us. And that's probably the best thing I've seen from closing this company thus far is we want to assure that the communication is always so clear with everyone and never make them feel like they're in the gray area whatsoever. And it can be good or bad news, to be honest, but the best thing you can always do is know that those guys were honest from the get-go. And we never thought they were shady, they were doing anything behind our backs. We told them exactly what our plan is at all times.
100%. I think just instilling that trust from day one as a new
Yeah.
owner is huge. I just interviewed someone who said, some of their employees cried when they heard that the business was sold. I mean, it's a scary time for
Oh
employees.
yeah.
But yeah, I guess rolling into my next question is just what's your day-to-day like now? What are you focused on? What's your partner focused on? How are you spending your time, with both I guess, paving companies, your other businesses you kind of mentioned, but what about just for your current CEO role? What does that look like?
So I talk to majority of my time right now is finding some new companies. So I talk to old cigarette smoking truck driver guys who own, 15, $20 million paving companies and see if they want to sell them to me and get on the phone with them. And that's part of my time. The other part of it as well is, recruiting other CEOs for the companies we're acquiring as well and having a Rolodex of that. And probably the third allocation is talking to more family office and private equity groups who want to invest in this sector. That's probably how I spend probably 100% of my time today. The other companies I own are pretty much on automation, right? The company I built, even I own that company today. My healthcare company, it runs without me. The guys are fantastic. It comes with the part for the course that I hired great people around me who are loyal to me and the company and what we built thus far. And I try to implement that because ultimately management turns into culture as long as you have people who love each other at the business. And I try to focus on that. Like I heard Scott Galloway say this, is that if he has four people in a company that go to lunch together, he'll pay for it, right? If they want to go travel together, as long as there's four of them, he'll pay for it. They can go to Tulum for all he cares. Because ultimately, what I want to see is a level of camaraderie that they love being with the people that they're working with, because that is more important than a bump in salary. It's more important than benefits because the key thing that I also learned is at 40, the number one cause of depression is not how much money you have, whether your parents got divorced. It's like, do you have a lot? Do you have a community? Right. So create a community, create some level of camaraderie in every business that you go build, and it will automate and run without you. And that's ultimately what I focus on today if you want to go grow multiple businesses.
No, that's great advice. I guess let's dig into, one thing you mentioned is, or we've spoken a lot about, is the recruiting of the CEO or this
Yeah.
expert, right, for the paving business, especially. I think a lot of folks, this is something people struggle with, which is just finding that GM, that CEO, that person to run the day to day. They want to buy a business, they don't want to be the CEO, and they just don't see sort of a path forward there. Do you recommend sort of working with a recruiter? How do you recommend compensating this person? What do you
Yeah.
do there?
So it depends on the business, right? So um, you want to do a salary that's somewhat reasonable and competitive, but I focus a lot more on the upside. So I do a percentage of growth, and I want them to know that, hey, you can go get a good salary, but I'm not going to give them the highest salary. If someone wants just like $400,000 salary and doesn't want to participate in upside, like you're just not my guy or gal. But if you want to participate in like 5% of EBITDA growth year over year, and you want to capture some of that, that is usually something that I'm quite keen on because it shows they have skin in the game. And that's another thing I do is I do use a recruiter now because I don't want to go on Indeed and LinkedIn and try to find people one by one. I
A
just want to
lot of work. It takes so much time.
it's a lot. Yeah. So if I can go pay, they're expensive. They take, 25% of the total salary plus, around $5,000 for a recruitment fee. I don't care. Like as long as the LTV is going to make sense, finding someone who's going to be with you for the next 5, 10 years, it pays its dividends because if you can take my company from $12 million today where it's at to 24, it's totally worth it. Um, and another key thing too is the CEO, when you ask for references, this is a huge hack. Like ask for five and like say, dude, put one person in there who probably doesn't like you and see if he's willing to go do that. The reason why I partnered with my partner Chris is I was like, hey man, can you give me some references about you? Like I know we don't know each other that well when we first got going, but let's just get some references. He gave me five references. He's like, these two like me, these two think I'm okay, and one person probably fucking hates me. But I want you to call all of them. I ended up like not even calling them because the fact that he sent me that email, I just knew he was a good guy, right? And there was heavy trust from that. Ultimately, I called the couple and they all said excellent things about him. But that is like the level of transparency and honesty you want from anyone you're going to go give a large salary or a big piece of equity to is honesty. To me, trust is everything, right? I can go take someone who's, a B today and take them to an A. But if I see an A plus player who's a thief and he's going to go steal from the business, your opportunity cost of replacing him is so expensive, right? So embed trust in people first and foremost. That is the one piece of advice in anything that you go do in hiring, partnering, investors. Know that trust is always the number one revolver that you want to focus on.
100%. That's such a good strategy. I'm gonna start doing that. Well, Definitely asking for a person, someone who doesn't like you. I absolutely love that. And with this first deal, I guess just for some clarity, have you been part of the day-to-day at all since closing? What does that look like for you?
I have, yeah. So like for my role too, is like I'm part of the portfolio companies. Like I help more on the company side, and Chris manages a lot more of the fund admin stuff. But I'm already implementing like the new website, the new level of tech that we're implementing. I'm changing the accounting, right? We're implementing a better software for accounting that they have. Their books were all fucked up when I got it, right? So I'm going in there and managing that operation first with their existing employees and my team to make sure that we can go optimize things from the get-go. So I'm heavily involved, definitely. It's a heavy lift for the first 30, 60 days.
And what is your CEO's role that, you've brought on since day one?
He goes in and first and foremost wants to fix some of the biggest deficits. So he's like, hey, like let me see what the cost per job is right now. How are they measuring that, right? How many bids are they doing? So what I like to see is let's go measure the KPIs. So last year's KPIs, and let's go put how many bids did they do last year, how many jobs did they do, what did that equate to, right? And then okay, now for 2024, 25, how many jobs do we plan on doing? How many bids do we want to go do? What is the cost per job going to look like? Can we measure that? And are we going to get a better delta off that? So we start putting KPIs in place from the get-go, and I want him to focus on that. So I even use a CEO coach for me. I use a guy named Eddie from CEO coach. I forgot the company name. I'll send a link after. But this guy coaches me on what to actually coach my CEO. Again, it's a whole who not how model, right? I'm not the smartest guy in the room. There's just smarter guys around me tell me what to do and then give it to other smarter guys in their own given sector. And that has worked quite well for us is leveling expectations with reality and knowing that if I hire the CEO and this is what they did last year, and you're going to go benchmark what you're going to do the next year, we can always look at that every month, every quarter, and assure that we're going to go meet those benchmarks.
I mean, I think one of the big reasons you're able to go in and start implementing changes too is just because like you brought on someone who knows exactly what that benchmark should be or that metric should be, those KPIs
Yeah.
should be. And, they ran a business in this exact space, but bigger. So, there's way less of a learning curve, I'm guessing, which is different from traditional searches, just going in, having to learn the business for a year to even
Yeah.
like have a sense of what's going on. So
One thing too, I think I want to break the ice for everyone and your community, whatever, is go bigger. Why? It's actually less riskier to go bigger. For the mere fact that you have more money to go hire better people around you and more resources to go spend. Some of the biggest mistakes that I've done in my past, like I've been a real estate investor for a long time. Today, if I were to go back, I would have sold all the real estate and not done any deals. But buying triplexes and fourplexes and duplexes are just not scalable. Why? Because the second you have to hire a property manager, it eats into your cash flow because the deal is so small and you're working on small margin. Same thing with like if the roof goes down on a duplex, you're fucked, right? You have no cash flow for the whole year. But when I have $2 million of EBITDA cash flow that I can go work with and 15 or $20 million of revenue, I can go hire someone for 300,000 bucks. And I'm comfortable doing that. So you want that level of arbitrage to be able to go hire amazing talent because the revenue supports it.
absolutely. Sam, I know we're almost at time now, but any sort of final words of advice, especially for first-time buyers out there? Um, and I guess how can people reach you if they do find a paving deal out there or just want to get
Yeah.
advice? I know you're going to say no to 98% of them, but
um, I mean, look, if you want to go buy a business today, be very specific in what you're looking for. It's really easy to get stuck in biz buy sell and sit there for hours and eat Cheetos all day and look at 100 businesses. Um, Go understand that you want a business in this sector and this geographic location with this revenue and EBITDA. And I promise you, you'll go put a couple of LOIs out there in the next 30 days. The reason why we've been successful is how specific we are. And we're drawing a lot of attention to that. And I've never heard of anyone that when they actually focus on a certain niche, they won't, the likelihood of success is just much higher. So first and foremost, go do that. Secondly, if you want to get in touch with me, my name is Sam Mahmood. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, the Sam Mahmood as well. And if you have a paving deal, send it my way. If you want to buy a business and you're an emerging manager, maybe I might partner with you as well. So just give me a shout.
sounds great. Thanks again, and let's stay in touch, Sam.
All right, cool.